You know that fire extinguisher you walk past every day? Well, it's just one tiny piece of a much bigger safety puzzle. In this explainer, we're going to break down Kenya's official 2007 fire risk reduction rules. We'll turn all that complex legal language into a simple, life saving guide for your workplace. Let's dive right in.
So here's our roadmap. First, we'll cover the why, the whole reason these rules are even a thing. Then we'll get into the nitty gritty, moving from prevention to action, how to build a physically safe space, create daily safety habits, and have a rock solid plan for emergencies. We'll wrap it all up with how to stay compliant and prepared for the long haul.
Okay, let's get one thing straight right off the bat. These rules are not suggestions. They apply to every single workplace in Kenya. And the core idea is actually pretty simple. You can't manage a risk if you don't understand it. So step one is always figuring out what you're up against.
Now, the rules use a very specific term you need to know: occupier. This isn't just some fancy title. It means the person with the final say: the owner, the manager, the boss. The bottom line is, if you're in charge, then you are legally responsible for this stuff. The buck stops with you. You might think a fire is just a fire, right? Wrong. Using the wrong extinguisher can turn a small problem into a catastrophe. The rules break fires down into 4 classes. Class A is your everyday stuff like paper and wood. Class B is liquids like gas or grease. Class C is the really dangerous one, live electrical gear. And Class D is for industrial metals. Knowing which class of risk you have is the absolute foundation of your entire safety plan. All right, so we know the enemy. How do we build our defenses? Well, it all starts long before any alarm ever goes off. Your single most important safety feature is the building itself and how you store the dangerous stuff. When you're dealing with high-risk areas, the rules get super specific, and for good reason. A room holding flammable materials isn't just a room. It's basically a containment cell. We're talking thick concrete, solid steel, special fire-rated doors. The goal here isn't just to prevent a fire. It's to build a cage that can actually hold one if the worst happens. The storage rules follow a strict logic. You lock down the materials in proper containers, you put them in a safe spot, and, this is critical, you make sure that spot is nowhere near an escape route. And see that detail about the 80-centimeter gap? That's not about being tidy. It's a required buffer zone for airflow and to give firefighters room to work. Every centimeter matters.
A fireproof room is pretty useless if no one knows what's inside, right? That's why the rules are crystal clear. Every single container has to be marked highly flammable. But it doesn't stop there. It also needs a label saying exactly what's inside and, most importantly, which type of extinguisher to use on it, because grabbing the wrong one is like throwing gasoline on the fire.
Okay, so you're building a solid, job done, right? Not even close. Fire safety isn't a one-and-done deal. It's something you practice every single day. This part is all about the little habits and routines that add up to a much safer workplace. This is the stuff you just can't skip. Taking out the trash daily means less fuel for a potential fire. Keeping those walkways clear means people can actually escape. Sticking oily rags in a special metal bin stops them from bursting into flames on their own. And good ventilation, that stops invisible fumes from turning a room into a time bomb. Let's talk about 2 of the biggest fire starters: clutter and sparks. That mandatory 1-meter gap between machines, it's not for comfort, it's a fire break. It stops a fire from just hopping from one machine to the next. And for electricity, everything has to be grounded and checked every 6 months by a certified, competent person. That's not a suggestion, that's a rule with a paper trail. Prevention is absolutely key, but you have to be ready to act when things go wrong. No system is perfect. You need a clear, well-practiced plan for that moment the alarm starts blaring. This is all about what to do when prevention isn't enough. Listen, not all exits are created equal. There's a huge legal difference between a regular door and an official emergency exit. An emergency exit has strict rules about its width, its sign, even its construction. But here's the most important rule of all. It must lead you directly to a safe place outside, not just into another part of the building. So, who fights the fire in those first few critical seconds, before the professionals arrive? Your own people. The law says every workplace has to have a trained team. For a small place with 10 workers or less, you're legally required to have a firefighting team of at least 2 trained people. As your team grows, so does your responsibility. Once you hit 11 employees, the minimum team size goes up. For any workplace with between 11 and 25 people, the law says you need a designated fire team of at least 3.
And for any workplace with more than 25 employees, you need a pretty robust team of at least 5 trained members. And remember, these aren't just names on a piece of paper. These are your first responders, trained to act while everyone else gets to safety. All right, time for a crash course you absolutely need. Extinguish your colors. The color tells you everything you need to know in a hurry. You see a solid red one? That's water. It's only for Class A fires, paper, wood, that kind of thing. Use it on an electrical fire, and you're going to have a very, very bad day.
Next up, cream. A cream-colored extinguisher means it's filled with foam. Think of foam as a fire-smothering blanket. It's what you want for Class B liquid fires, like petrol or a grease fire. It just cuts off the oxygen supply. The blue one is the workhorse. It's full of dry powder, which is why it's often called an ABC extinguisher. It works on Class A, B, and C fires. It's a great all-arounder to have. Just be warned, that powder gets absolutely everywhere.
And finally, we have black. A black extinguisher means it's carbon dioxide or CO2. This is the specialist. Because CO2 doesn't conduct electricity, it's the one you grab for a fire in live electrical equipment, like in a server room. Look, the key takeaway is simple. In a real emergency, you won't have time to read the tiny print. You have to know your colors. So you've got the right equipment and the right plans. But how do you make sure it all actually stays up to date and works when you need it? This final section is all about the paperwork and procedures that prove your system is working. It's all about policy, audits, and accountability. The law says every single workplace has to have a written fire safety policy. Think of it as your master playbook for safety. It needs to cover everything: evacuation plans, training schedules, who's in charge of what, where the assembly point is. And this can't be some document you write once and forget about. It has to be a living, breathing guide that everyone understands. And to make sure that policy is more than just words on a page, the law requires an annual checkup. A certified auditor has to come in, inspect everything, and file a report with the government at least once every 12 months. Let me be crystal clear. This is not optional. Failing to do this is a prosecutable offense. And that brings us to the final, really important question. It's easy to look at all of this as just another government checklist, right? A bunch of boxes to tick. But the real goal is to go beyond that and build a true culture of safety. So I'll leave you with this. Is your workplace just ticking boxes, or are you all together building a real foundation for safety?